Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to Tool Show with me, Master Dan, the Journeyman shooter. And we're going to be filming one of our weekly coffee time segments here, and I figured it'd be a great day to get out and talk about something that's going to be going on in the city right now, and a lot of people are going through it. And what is that? Well, it's spring cleaning. So everybody's kind of trying to take back their house from all the dust and all the allergies and all the problems that are out there. And I know my personal problem is the balcony that I have. It's the pigeons have kind of taken over. So every year I have to fight the pigeons at this time of the year, which is no big deal, but you just got to kind of make the most out of those pigeons. And it could be a lot worse, but that was the one thing. One year I remember it was especially bad. I broke my leg that Christmas, and it ended up turning out that the pigeons basically took over the balcony because I couldn't scare them off every day. So I had to come up with some kind of plan to get rid of the pigeons, and eventually they just ended up staying because there was one alpha pigeon that took over the whole pigeon's nest kind of thing, and you couldn't get them off. But cleaning it up was one of the biggest problems. So the biggest part about that was making sure you use the proper tools for cleaning up when you're doing that, because it's kind of crazy. You don't want to be cleaning up with all that junk that's in there, especially with the pigeons. It gets pretty dangerous with all the different diseases and crazy stuff that are going around, so you got to be smart. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you're using like the protective gloves and all the protective clothing, and even some protective sprays possibly. You want to use the bleach and all the other good stuff that's going along with that, because that's pretty important. But you don't want to use it on the animals themselves. You just want to make sure you're getting it all cleaned off with that kind of stuff. But one of the things with that is, I know when I got out there the next spring, it was all completely solidified into like a big kind of mess, so I had to spray it all off. But the problem when you're living in an apartment building, or you're living in kind of a condo building, is you don't have access to a hose that makes it through your whole apartment. So what I ended up doing was going to Walmart, and I ended up picking up one of those little hose attachments that goes from a smaller hose to a bigger hose, and that ended up helping big time because that kind of took over with the main portion of it. But so I ended up running that through my living room, and I had like a 50-foot hose, and I've never prayed so much in my life that a hose didn't break or whatever, but it worked out, and I ended up spraying it all off. And the problem was the nest was too big to spray off, and I thought I could break it apart by spraying it a whole bunch, but the nest ended up soaking up most of it, so I ended up firing this nest across the road, and it was crazy. But the pigeons that took over, I ended up calling one of them Carlos Santana, because he was the alpha male of the whole group there, and his girlfriend was the black magic woman, who they ended up having a whole bunch of babies. And it was pretty interesting. It was something to see, but that was probably I couldn't get rid of them, so I just ended up having to let them live there, because it was either that or have the magpies or all the other birds take over the balcony, which was not very good. So when you're spring cleaning, you want to make sure that you find either, what we did was we got it was basically a super soaker gun, and we ended up just filling it with water and spraying every time they showed up or whatever, but there was no big deal with that, and that worked out pretty fine. But one of the big things about pigeons is they're actually pretty relaxing, and most people don't know that, because Mike Tyson, he was one of the baddest men on earth during the 90s, and one of the ways he relaxed was by keeping pigeons and training pigeons and doing all that kind of stuff. And it actually wasn't too bad. These were like the second or third pigeons that I had, because when my dad bought a church when we were younger, he ended up moving into this weird church when he got a divorce, and it was kind of a weird midlife crisis thing. But there was a pigeon that it was kind of a wounded pigeon, and it ended up living right out in front of where was it that we were at? There was like an air vent basically where it fired warm air out of the kitchen, and it was cold outside, and we found this wounded pigeon, and we ended up healing it and bringing it back to like full health. And the long story, I don't want to tell the whole ending, because that'll be someday when I'm trying to get my life stories of what happened to the pigeon that I named Cheech. But he was a good one, but he was no Carlos Santana and the Black Magic Woman, but they were all pretty good. But other than that, you gotta try to find the most out of it, because my leg was broken and I really didn't have much time there, so I ended up having to make the most out of it. And luckily the pigeons kind of helped, and they kept all the other birds off there. But the next year trying to clean it up was quite a mess. It was it was interesting. So what you want to do is you want to try to get rid of them before they end up taking over your balcony, which is tough, but that's what it is. You can't let them put the nest on there, and you can't let them build all that stuff, or you're going to be regretting it later in life, and that's what it is. And so when you're cleaning up, and especially in the springtime, because that's what you're doing right now, it's spring cleaning. So when you're doing that, make sure you get that balcony cleaned up, because it's important, or your deck or whatever you got to, because you don't want people walking out there barefoot and stepping in crazy stuff. So make sure you're cleaning up, make sure you're doing a good job, and best of luck. For Tool Show, I'm Master Dan, the Journeyman shooter, and coffee time. Have a great day. clean that balcony and respect your pigeons. Oh wait, one thing that I forgot to talk about is I remember when because pigeons are in every big city, so it's not just our city that's going to be dealing with these kind of things. So everybody should know how to get rid of the pigeons and try to get rid of them. Because I remember when we had the church, like my dad, we always used to go across to Detroit, and I remember there was one pigeon that was spray painted in Detroit, and that was always the thing. And you shouldn't do that, but that was what happened to the pigeons there. They were not treated as well, and that's what ended up happening. So you got to make sure you get them off your balcony before people start doing that kind of stuff to them. But just use the water gun if you can, or little salt things, I guess, if you have some kind of shooter for salt things. But whatever you're doing, just make sure you're cleaning your balcony and get everything cleaned off, and you do your best job. So for Tool Show, Master Dan, Journeyman, Shooter, have a great day. Clean the balcony.